regard to this particular paper that you may float in your curriculum would be, first, is scientific method a unique inventory of the Western civilization? I would answer in a negative, but thus, though modern science happens to be a chapter in the civilizational progress of Europe, nevertheless, the scientific method cannot be something unique to European culture. You have its reflections seen in the Chinese tradition as well as in Indian tradition. Second is a civilization continuity between Western philosophy and modern science. You will have to say in affirmation towards this because, as I have pointed out earlier, modern science has taken place, or the inventions of modern science, or the theorizations of modern science has taken place at a particular time in the history of the evolution of European thought, and therefore they can claim a civilizational continuity. Nevertheless, one should remember that in Europe, science has emerged critiquing philosophy, and in that sense, if you say that science has dissolved its civilizational continuity as well as the European civilization is concerned. Nevertheless, even if you say that, well, that is the way culture progresses, there is always, an antithesis being developed from the thesis, and towards it moves, the systematic dialectical progression. Even if you grant that science is a product of the dialectical progression of civilization, well, as I have pointed out, if you consider the scientific method as the backbone, the essence of science, well, then you'll have to say that science is not something unique to Western philosophy, but rather shared by parallel other traditions. Now, the third issue is, can science be identified with its inventions and technologies? This is a very dangerous move that we find in the contemporary community, particularly among scientists. And I don't have to relate, how the scientists these days work. They work as corporates, and I don't want to go into the detail of that. But often, as a result, the society equates science with its inventions and technologies, which is a very dangerous move. While technologies and inventions are just byproducts of science, one should address to the core science as well. And that is also visible in the way the students opt for scientific courses. If you look at the courses of the attention the students pay to courses, you find that always technologies are being addressed better than the core science. That itself depicts how the society understands science. The last one would be scientific method as central to science. As I said, we will have to discern what is called the scientific method as the essence of science, and then the attempt in this paper would be to discern the scientific method inbuilt in Indian culture. There is possibility for potential contributions from scientific method from non-Western philosophical traditions, and this need to be explored. Are there elements of scientific method in Indian logic? By Indian logic, I mean Indian epistemology. As I have earlier said, Indian epistemology, Indian logic, and Indian science are, synonymous terms as far as Indian knowledge structure is concerned. Professor Sripeetam has beautifully told us how the two knowledge edifices, the European and the Western, have formatted in different ways. While mathematics has been the foundation for the Western knowledge system, because only mathematics could claim a priori statements. In India, thinkers or philosophers were never fascinated with a priori statements. We were quite happy with a posteriori, and rather our thinkers were wise to learn that a priori is a past. In some sense, every assertion is fallible. And thus, later, you also know that White has brought up this challenge between a priori and a posteriori distinctions in one of his famous articles. So the address that I would like to bring forth here are there elements of scientific method in Indian logic. Here, what happens is in European science you will find that logic precedes epistemology because logic slash mathematics would be the foundation because they alone can provide the a priori statement, and from that emerge epistemology or the ways of knowing, and only posterior to epistemology one can even think of other sciences, be positive sciences or human sciences. On the contrary, in the Indian context, the foundation is language, language at the subtle sense, and from there emerge science, because here the cognizer is naturally being exposed to the phenomenon, and there is the response that is emanating from the cognizer about the phenomenon, and then the knowledge produces that epistemology emerges, and posterior to epistemology or logic is inbuilt in epistemology. As you all know, in the Panchavaiva Vakya, you have the induction slash reduction, and again, there is a wide criticism that Indian logic had to face, that it confuses induction and reduction. Often it has been said, we all claim or promote that Panchavaiva Vakya is a fine combination of both induction and reduction, and the Udaharana Vakya functions as conclusion for the induction and as the premises for the reduction. But this is not very much appealing for the European community because the Udaharana Vakya is an empirical statement. And as you all know, in reduction, you cannot have an empirical statement. So this has been problematic. So now my proposal is, instead of considering Panchavaiva Vakya as an ideal, deductive, valid argument form, if you consider it as an explanatory method, well, all those minus points, all that shortcomings that you attach to the argument form would become the merits for it, to which I am coming subsequently. The third point is, what are the innovations in Indian theories of causation? Now, this theory of causation is something inbuilt in Indian culture. If you look at metaphysics, if you look at epistemology, this causal relation is something very, very fundamental. And how this base of causation or the priorities given to causation has gone indeed to articulate the scientific method will be something that we will have to look at. And identify practice of various branches of sciences in ancient and medieval India. As we are told that the ancient ancient India, branches of science like metallurgy, arithmetic, and medicine are some of the sciences that have flourished very well. So identify the practices of various branches of science and explore the texts and the traditions of scientific schools that survived in ancient India. Is there a continuity of knowledge from science to ontology? This is something which we philosophers, I suggest we need to dare to address. Is there a continuity from science to ontology? As I said, if we can find an answer to it, well then this would be the first tradition which would promote a continuity from phenomena to the transcendental reality. Indian philosophy of science is stage to far. What so far has been done on Indian philosophy of science? We need to look at it. And interestingly, I must also tell you that recently one of the institutions that is designed to promote science has granted me a project on this very same thing. And it was all a lot of fun because when we were waiting outside for the interview, everyone was introducing themselves, and then they found me and then they asked me from which science stream are you, and I said I'm from philosophy. What are you doing here? Because what has a philosopher got to do with scientists? And again, the whole show repeated inside the interview room too. And the scientists were, I mean, what is actually your demand? Are you trying to look at any particular science stream are you interested in Ayurveda? I said, no, I am not interested in any particular stream of Indian science. I am interested in identifying, discerning the scientific method that is inbuilt in Indian knowledge system. Finally, they did grant me the project. That is the big story of it. So, we need to uh, bring the stage of art. What is happening in this particular discipline? And also give courage to the Indian scientists. And Indian scientists are in some way not very confident in addressing these issues. So we'll have to stand by them, give them confidence on and in undertaking research in these areas. Analysis of the research of are done on the area. To my understanding, D.P. Chattopadhyaya, Sundar Sarukar, and few others have laid the foundation to work in this area of research. However, there is this sudden upsurge in enthusiasm in post-colonial India to unravel the scientific undertones of Indian wisdom. In this context, I must also tell you that during the colonial and the post-colonial times, Indian thinkers were told that, look, yours is sheer speculative metaphysics, nothing withstanding science, and therefore you will have to make or appeal to the scientific elements in your thinking, and therefore philosophers try to looked into our metaphysics and try to discern the scientific elements of it. Researchers in Indian sciences fall into two camps with regard to this. One subscribing to the position that everything that science speaks of today can be traced to ancient Indian wisdom. It anticipates even some of the popular concepts of contemporary physics like the theory of relativity and quantum, especially in its idealistic traditions like Vedanta and Madhyamika Buddhism. This is one stream. There is nothing innovative about modern science. This would be one particular position. The other group maintains that such claims are prejudiced, based on false national pride, a product of intellectual insecurity and inferiority, a sentiment uncalled for, given the high quality of intellection prevailed in ancient India. To my mind, the truth seems to lie somewhere in between. We need not, go to say that everything that today modern science speak of we have had in ancient Indian tradition. Not the other claim that ancient Indian wisdom was sheer speculative and science was foreign to us. So the truth seems to lie somewhere in between. Ancient Indian civilization has contributed significantly to science. We may point out the contributions of ancient India to disciplines like, as I said, mathematics, astronomy, metallurgy, medicine, linguistics, and so on. Explore, and therefore we need to explore the practice of science rooted in the rationalistic traditions prevalent in ancient India. My appeal is to look at the rationalistic traditions prevalent in ancient India, particularly Vaisheshika, unaffected by the high-flown metaphysics, but eventually you find that Vedanta coming up, suppressing these rationalistic traditions. Realism can be conceived as that ontology, best voices science. In ancient India, realistic schools were more vibrant than their idealistic counterparts because, as far as Indian knowledge system is concerned, we have had a very open outlook without presuppositions. And therefore, realism had caught up the attention of the common public. Scientific rationality was highly promoted by the realistic schools, and idealistic traditions also, mind you, indirectly responded and nurtured science, challenging and critiquing rationalistic philosophies. As Professor Bhatt has wisely pointed out that here none of the schools survived independently. We had to presuppose the Purva Paksha, and it is only with the help of the Purva Paksha that the Uttara Paksha could survive. So the contributions of the idealistic tradition to the rationalistic stream is also significant. Unless they pose criticism, a particular rationalistic tradition, say Vaisheshika, couldn't grow and survive for centuries together. Characteristics of Indian epistemology like inbuilt fallibilism in Indian knowledge analysis, as I already pointed out, they bring in inbuilt fallibilism within the system. Naturalistic mode of conceptual analysis, disfavoring a priority against foreign on all this, but then I'll just point out these. Natural relation between the sign and the signified. As you find in the formal logic, there is no formal relation that is being addressed here. The semiotics that we have in India is natural in kind. The sign and the significant in Indian semiotics is the relation between them is natural. All point towards the basic scientific temperament in Indian thinking. We also need to attend to these points that I have bulleted. I'll just quickly go through. Unique role of scientific perception as a source of knowledge. Even a great idealist thinker like Shankara has extolled the role of perception and pointed out that perception has a unique status among the methods because a fallacious perception can be rectified only by a repeated perception. Visible similarities between Nyaya Paradharmana and the DN model of explanation should also be codified. As I have been emphasizing the task of disentangling the scientific method from Indian epistemology, a sample task let me present before you. Look, you have the 5 member syllogism here. The Panchavayava Vakya, Parvado Vaniman, Dhumavadwa, Yo Dhumavasa Savaniman, Tadha Mahanatavid, Yoyam Parvataha, Tasma, Tadha. This is the Panchavayava Vakya. And from here, let me go to the DN model by Carl Hempel. Carl Hempel has reduced what is called the DN model and the ICE model. The DN model speaks about the deductive nomenological model, speaks about the explanation. He lists out several criterions by which you can identify a scientific method. This is an explanatory model. The explanation must be a valid deductive argument. The explanation must contain at least one general law. The explanation must be empirically testable, and the sentences in the explanation must be true. If you look at the Panchavayava Vakya, if you put it side by side, you see that the Panchavayava Vakya seem to be following all these characteristics insisted by the DN model. The merits of considering the Panchavayava Vakya as an explanatory model should be emphasized. As I said earlier, if you consider it as a formal, valid, deductive argument, the presence of the Udaharana Vakya would be problematic, and also it will be accused as confusing the reduction and induction, and both these negative points would turn out to be merits if you consider it as an explanatory model. And let me also emphasize this distinction. This is a very large issue, but then I just want to make one sentence on it. Nyaya seems to be addressing why questions, while the modern scientific explanatory models seem to be addressing how questions. For instance, in Parvado Vanhiman, you are not interested why there is fire in the mountain. Rather, you are interested in how is it that I know that there is fire in the mountain. But the focus is on the individual inferential agent rather than on the object in the external world. Now, with this, I wind up with one more point, and then I shall wind up with the scientific method. I suggest that all of you should initiate an elective on Indian scientific method in your curriculum, and the primary objectives of this would be the following: draw insights from Indian philosophical traditions, particularly the rationalistic ones, to figure out the nature and scope of science in the bigger canvas of Indian intellection. Explore Indian epistemology to get good grasp of the foundations of Indian sciences. Delineate the scientific method, impress it in the epistemic and the logical principles propounded by Nyaya and Buddhist schools. Examine how the realistic metaphysics propounded by various schools like say Vaisheshika have established scientific mode of thinking. Analyze the unique role rendered by causal relations. Study the conceptual framework of the history of science in India. Examine why Indian science failed. This is very important. Though we claim that we have had elements of science, it's a fact that science did not mature into technology. Often it has been said that the reason being is that once in an argument the conclusion has been drawn at the intellectual level, the arguer is satisfied, nothing further than that. Example why Indian science failed to get separated from philosophy is contented method, like in the case of the West. Reason out why the moment of fission did not reach its point of culmination, leaving Indian science in its rudimentary level. Conduct an empirical study and collect data on the development of various sciences in India like medicine, mathematics, astronomy, metallurgy, etc. if you are interested. And also analyze the role of perception as a method of knowing, extolled in almost all systems. Explore the scientific and philosophical dimensions of space and time in Indian knowledge system. Though a lot has been done on it, very few at the scientific level. Elucidate on the naturalistic features of Indian epistemology with an aim to rejuvenate the scientific discipline. The secondary objectives would be, skip that. And I will also request you to juxtapose it to the European philosophy of science. And the European philosophy of science, I don't want to waste my time read it. You all have a common syllabus on European philosophy of science, and the Indian philosophy of science should be invariably juxtaposed to European philosophy of science. And now I'll move on to methods of teaching in philosophy, which will be more interesting. It's one thing to talk about philosophical method and quite another to talk about teaching methods in philosophy. So in this presentation, what I plan to do is just to raise a few methods of teaching in philosophy. Primarily, the dialogical method is one time-tested method to impart knowledge in philosophy. Socrates, the wise, has said to have effectively employed it. Some of the Upanishads are also set in the set of dialogical model. Philosophy since ancient times was never considered frozen package handed down to the students. On the contrary, doing philosophy was always considered as an activity performed right before the eyes. Once it has been said, it seems that Wittgenstein used to take a long time to complete his sentence. He used to walk from here to there and then again take another walk from there to here, and then he would complete the sentence. And once the student complained, "We are getting bored. Why are you taking so long?" And then he said, "I am providing you freshly baked stuff, and I am not getting it pre-cooked. I am doing philosophy right in front of your eyes." So what we need to do is make philosophy right in front of the students with their help. Doing philosophy was always conceived as an activity performed right before the eyes of the students. They were handed down the freshly baked stuff, not the cold storage products. Neither Socrates nor the Upanishads of our country believed in transmitting standardized knowledge and understanding. Let me probe into the reasons why dialogical methods suit philosophic understanding best. In a dialogue, ideally there is a set of tools to which the initiator leads the participant. There will be an initiator, there will be a participant. Socratic dialogues are the best examples of it. The truth emerges, as it were, from the dialogue that takes place, as Richard rightly points out, in an ideal debate, the truth flies down like a swan, not owned by either the initiator or the participant. Professor Bhatt has beautifully spoken about the nature of the Vada. It's a joint product. Second, dialogical method also helps us to be aware of our unjustified presuppositions. If you have unjustified presuppositions, the participant would help you to remove those, often carry unknowingly. The opponent or the fellow participant will have to be vigilant in pointing out those presuppositions involved while reasoning out or establishing a viewpoint. Finally, dialogical method has dialectic inbuilt in it. The journey in pursuit of truth begins with the thesis, and the opponent or fellow participant may provide antithesis or induce us to come forth with an antithesis, and therefore together we move on to the synthesis. In Nyaya, I don't want to repeat that because Professor Bhatt has beautifully spoken about the ways of doing Vada. And while speaking about Vada, the text itself says that Vada has been undertaken ideally between a teacher and a taught, or between two peers who are jointly interested in bringing truth and not interested in winning over the other. But today, even as I speak about all this, very few fortunate teachers are provided with the opportunity to do philosophy in this fashion. When I speak from this podium, I pretty realize that we cannot undertake the Vada type of debate in the class. The common practice seems to be that the teacher disciplined by the UGC norms to cover units periodically. You are supposed to cover one particular unit at a particular period. Presets his class and see to it that he covers that portion which he intended to come watch me. Whether the student is looking out or the students are talking amidst themselves, they don't care because they will have to complete the syllabus that's given. She does not bother whether the student promotes those very ideas or opposes it. Most often the student would take a passive attitude towards it, which is indeed something unbearable for a genuinely motivated teacher. Now, how we can create interest in the discipline? How can we bring an average or below average student to get involved in the class? Let me suggest a few practices I have followed and found effective. One, place each philosopher in historical or conceptual background. While we philosophers take care to relate the conceptual background, we omit the history as it seems irrelevant to the concept interest. But remember, the students would have a better grasp of the concept if we draw the historical situation as well before them. Or, really small anecdotes like the one which I have said to you. A reversal of this is also useful, can be used as a useful method. When you address a particular problem that surfaces in a particular tradition, don't hesitate to cross the boundaries of the tradition and instantiate a similar one in another tradition. Supposing you are talking about idealism or subjective idealism in a particular tradition, try to cross over the boundaries and come to Yogacara and speak about the type of subjective idealism that is entertained in the Indian tradition. For example, when we discuss the JGB analysis, I will get another example. It would be useful if you also cite the Indian parallel to it, provided the student is familiar with Indian tradition. Now, conduct quiz programs. Make small competitions run by students. You please don't participate. You step aside and then let the students create questions. Let them conduct the show. Run by students, and the teacher can stay inside as a spectator. You can show photographs of thinkers and identify the person. For instance, how does Albinai Goldman look like? Though this is not very, very significant from the examination point of view, all this will inculcate interest in the subject. Narrate small anecdotes of your experience with leading thinkers of the time. I'm sure some of the teachers who are sitting here would have had direct contacts with, for instance, and I'm fortunate to have direct contacts with Jain Mohanty, Bal Subramanian, Dayaji, Professor Bhattacharya, all the senior professors, and the wise words that you heard from them, their experiences, all this you can narrate to your students so that they are attracted towards the subject. Or with foreign scholars. Relate to the young how these masters philosophize and share your experiences in conferences and seminars with them. Training to connote or conceptualize, which has been already discussed earlier. Conduct a surprise test. Ask your students to write down definitions of key terms and concepts. For instance, what is dilatation? What is connotation? Small definitions, Mr. Bhatt has beautifully spoken about the significance of attending to your language. By asking them to conceptualize, you can test two things on them. First, how was it that the child is using language and his ability to connote. This would give them necessary training in conceptualizing the issue. And outcome-based education, as you're all aware, today, as you know, UDC insists on OBT, that's outcome-based education, for which it calls upon professors to adopt various instructional strategies, adapt to new and innovative teaching methods and methods of evaluation. While designing the course, how many of us take care to redesign it to fit best the community of students you are going to address? Suppose you standardly provide the syllabus to each batch of students, whatever be the nature of the group. We will have to make slight alterations with regard to the type of students that you are provided with. It is also very essential that every 3 years you revise your electives along with the course, and it's mandatory by the UGC that you have to revise the syllabus once in 3 years. But take care to put in your experiences while handling the electives or the course, and the experiences that you have had while conducting the courses should reflect in the revision of the syllabus. Teaching and learning outcomes. It's very essential that we stipulate the teaching learning outcomes prior to the class. You know, as you know, probably you are all aware about the teaching learning methods. Like, prior to starting a course, the instructor should ideally declare that these are the outcomes expected once this task, say, a particular unit is covered. For instance, if you are teaching symbolic logic, you could detail the outcomes anticipated by attending a particular unit. After completion of every unit, the teacher can distribute a feedback form seeking information as to how well the promises made at the beginning were achieved at the end. Yet another method for self-appraisal would be to attend peer lectures. I can attend yet another professor's lecture. Learning is an active and serious exercise. Teaching learning or learning to teach is a lifetime process. If you continue the age-old method your professor has adopted, but definitely you will be a failure. For everything has changed. The nature of the student has changed. What has to be taught has changed. But you insist that you will not change. That will make only a failure of the whole show. Lucky are those who carry themselves light and can crack jokes as you conduct the class. And please be original. Remember, students are no more information seekers. Information is at their hand. You don't have to tell them what is subjective idealism or what is JTB definition. That they know if they are interested. What they are looking for is how do you philosophize before them. Some of the teaching learning experiments are peripatetic method. Take them for a walk. The peripatetic method is a historically proved method. Take them for a walk. A lot can happen over a cup of coffee. Take them for a cup of coffee a lot. And as it's been said, a lot of philosophy also can happen over a cup of coffee. We can also have philosophy clubs. Exposure to formal conferences. Whenever you go for conferences, please have one of those students along with them. Conduct debates, oral chanting. You teach you teach Ishavasya Upanishad. Make a habit to also orally chant. Teach them to by heart the sutras or the shlokas and then orally chant. Text reading. For instance, you can read Plato's dialogue in the class and form reading clubs. That would also be very interesting. The disciplinary boundaries should be crossed. I don't want to go into that. Adopt ICPR. Positive creativity. This is something very, very important. Otherwise, you will not be able to help them make philosophers and kindle research attitude. At the postgraduate level itself, you will have to kindle research attitude. The teacher should resist the temptation of providing topics. When they come for monographs or when they come for dissertation, you are ready with the topic. So that the trouble is over. If the child writes, you give the topic. Resist the temptation to give the topic. Repeatedly ask the student to go visit the library, come up with the topic, and only then use it to guide him. Convince the researcher that it is his game and he will have to play it all by himself. And also encourage peer discussion. With this, I invite the presentation. Thank you. Thank you very much, ma'am. We request Professor S. Paneerselvam to give his valuable.
Can we have some discussion on this paper for 5 minutes?
The floor is open for discussion. A 5-minute discussion.
Yes, please introduce your name, please.
I'm Sripeetam from Madras Christian College. Ma'am, actually, I have this doubt when you are comparing between Hempel's covering law model with the Panchayavayava. There is always a kind of crisscross relation you always find, but I think stating that whatever Hempel has said is already there in the Panchayavayava, I think it's a bit of a too hasty kind of an argument to be put forward, and because for example, the universal statement which Hempel would have mentioned there, or the general argument which Hempel mentioned, I don't know where we can find it in the Panchayavayava. There can be a crisscross relation. I'm not denying that fact, but stating it is exactly matching with going forward and saying it's exactly matching with our Avayavas, able to understand that point.
I definitely do not say that. See what Hambal has said, we have had it in our tradition. That expresses some kind of cultural insecurity. I don't feel that Indian culture has to be safeguarded by showing that whatever the Western culture have had, we have a counterpart of it in India. Indian culture is high by itself. You don't have to juxtapose it to an alien culture to justify that we are great parallel. The point that I'm trying to make is the type of science that we today speak of has been singly owned by a particular culture, say the European culture. Okay. Now I'm trying to argue that not only in India, there are several traditions, for instance, Chinese tradition. All of them have had the scientific method inbuilt in its culture, and this was a humble attempt to extract the scientific elements from Indian epistemology. And as an instance of it, there are several instances, several methods. As an instance, I have examined the Pancha Aveva Vakya, and due to lack of time, let me just address the pointed question. The general proposition that in the DN model you have had, we also have a general proposition. Is a general statement. That is why wherever there is smoke, there is fire is a general statement. And it is this general statement. The problem is that it is being attached with an udaharana vakya. Idha mahanasava, like in the kitchen. That has been a problem. But then this general statement is found in the Panchavaiva Vakya as well. But then the argument is, in the structure, not in the tradition, in the structure. And again, we are not saying that DN model, a type of DN model is visible here because historically, Panchavaiva Vakya is more ancient than DN model. Okay, and so therefore, and science might grow. And as such, if you are you working in philosophy science? If you are, you will know that DN model is not anymore favored by contemporary philosophers of science. You are aware of that. Science is growing. And when naturalism was in fashion, we tried to look at Indian epistemology, and we found that Indian epistemology is very much naturalistic, but not the type of Quinian naturalism. Now, what we need to do is we need to address our tradition, continue the tradition, because during the modernity, we have lost the continuity of from the classical to the contemporary times. We need to pick up the tradition and do it in our own way. I am not underscoring the fact that you will have to always juxtapose the European principle to the Indrajala's methods to glorify it. I'm not underscoring that.
Yeah, thank you, Professor, for this very thought-provoking lecture. I have a very simple question. You have used the words science, scientific method, and scientism. I think there we need one kind of some kind of concept of clarity, because if I see myself, is Anvikshiki kind of a science? Or if you look at even Western philosophy, the Anglo-Saxon versus Western tradition, is Anvikshiki a science like we do natural science? Is inquiry science? Understand? Human inquiry is science. But when you say it is science, are you meaning scientific, but natural science, or human science, or any intellectual inquiry? That's mine.
Primarily, I mean only natural science. I have delineated the human sciences at the very first slide, saying that adopts a different method, namely understanding, and I'm addressing only positive sciences. So that goes without saying. There is no ambiguity with regard to that. And my using three terms as synonyms: scientific method, and scientism. See, as I have repeatedly said, my interest is to discern the scientific method which functions as the backbone of science. Why? Science appears in different colors. Science today appears as technology. If you ask a common man what is science, they will say this is a science: fan, air conditioner. Okay, and if you ask a professor, that's not science. So science appears in different colors, but we are interested in the spirit of it, the method, which is science can, my claim is that science can be reduced to scientific method. And if science can be reduced to scientific method, well, then you have, or parallel scientific methods are available in other traditions other than the European tradition. This is my claim. And Anvikshiki, whether Anvikshiki is natural science, Anvikshiki is a particular stream of thinking, rationalistic philosophy, and there are elements of scientific method as it developed its argument nature. My claim, Anvikshiki cannot be treated with positive science, but there is a scientific method which has been developed by Anvikshiki.
Thank you. I request Professor S. Paneerselvam to give his valuable thoughts on Indian philosophical methods and Western philosophical methods. This will as well be followed by a discussion for 5 minutes.
Most revered and respected professors and my colleagues and student friends. I would like to discuss with you the Indian philosophical methods and Western philosophical methods. It is something like a comparative study. In this context, I would like to state that this year, the Indian Philosophical Congress, which is going to be held in the first week of January at Surat, had chosen the philosophical methods as one of the themes for the symposium. That was suggested by Professor Bhatt, and it has been unanimously accepted. And some scholars would be discussing this philosophical method. What would be my method? But before that, I would like to take a cue from what Professor Bhatt sir has said in the morning. In his talk, he made a reference to K.C. Bhattacharya's well-known article, Swaraj in Ideas. And I request all our students and colleagues of philosophy, they must read that article. What is the uniqueness of this article? The uniqueness of this article is that K.C. Bhattacharya makes a very clear-cut distinction between cultural subjugation and cultural assimilation. And he said that the need of the hour is cultural assimilation, because he rejects the hybridization of ideas, that is, aping the West, borrowing concepts from the West. And similarly, this idea was expressed by Sri Aurobindo as well as Dr. Radhakrishnan. In fact, Dr. Radhakrishnan very clearly said, we cannot cut ourselves off from the springs of our life. So this means many of our contemporary thinkers have concentrated on our own Indian tradition. In fact, in this context, I would like to state that there was a book published by Professor K. Chasanamurthy, that is Philosophy in India, that is a UNESCO project, wherein he he collected data from various universities and colleges throughout the country. And one of the articles, one of the references given in the book is by Professor Suresh Chandra, a late Professor Suresh Chandra. Suresh Chandra very clearly says that in India, philosophers can be classified into 3 categories. What are they? The first category of philosophers are those who can talk only in Sanskrit. Of course, he says that they are very great. No doubt they are very great. But unfortunately, they are not able to communicate that in English language. One example is where our Dayakrishna tried to have one the Samvada, where the dialogue could not take place properly. There was abruptly it was stopped. So the first group of philosophers are those who can talk and write only in Sanskrit. And unfortunately, they are not able to deliberate their ideas with others. And the second group of philosophers, according to Suresh Chandra, is those who write only on Western philosophy. Because of the influence of the Western philosophy, our contemporary thinkers who are in India, they are writing only on Western philosophy. Unfortunately, Suresh Chandra goes further, he says, unfortunately, these philosophers in India, the teachers of philosophy in India, are not recognized in the West. The Westerners, they don't care for Indian writing on Western philosophy or Western thinkers. Okay, this is a pathetic situation that we must admit that. And Suresh Chandra says that the third category of philosophers are those who are able to combine the Indian with the Western. And he says that these people or these thinkers are really making a contribution in the sense by taking some of the concepts from Indian tradition and applying it to the West and vice versa. And this classification very clearly shows that what we should do at present. So what we do now, let me tell you that in the 20th century in the West, there are three important movements which has shaken the philosophy world. The first one is the analytical method, or the method of analysis started with Russell, Wilkinson, and others. And the second is the hermeneutical method, where we can put the deconstruction, etc. And the third is the phenomenological method. These are the three important movements of the 20th century philosophy. Of course, from the Greek period onwards, we can talk about the dialectical method of Socrates and then rationalism, empirism, and all that one. But I am concentrating only on 20th century philosophy. So these are the three important movements, especially when this methodology of hermeneutics emerged in the philosophical discourse. It is said that this is something remarkable. Okay, but there are certain limitations of the Western hermeneutical method. First, I'll go to the analytical method. The analytical method is something which is due to Bertrand Russell to start with. Okay, when this method was introduced in the West, they said that this method could change the philosophical outlook of philosophers. Yes, that is true. But if you look at Indian philosophical tradition very closely, there is the method of analysis. Shankara has practiced the method of analysis, but we fail to note down that. We try to see Shankara as a metaphysical thinker alone. If you read a book by Ganesha Mishra, late Professor Ganesha Mishra, a great thinker, he has written one book, Advaita, the Method and Limits, where he shows that how Shankara could be viewed as a linguistic philosopher or analytical philosopher. So, the analytical method is not something new to us. But we fail to note down that. We fail to record that one. Because we think we are aping the West too much. And when Wittgenstein method, of course, I did my PhD on Wittgenstein, no doubt. But I have come out of Wittgenstein long back. So, though that method of Wittgenstein is something remarkable, no doubt. But Indian way of looking at Wittgenstein, in fact, many scholars call teachers of Wittgenstein in India as Indian Wittgenstein. There is a distinction between Indian Wittgenstein and Western Wittgenstein. That means those Indians who write on Wittgenstein are known as Indian Wittgenstein. So the West, they do not accept it. So what I'm trying to say is that the methodology of analysis is not something new to us. Shankara has given a beautiful analysis of this analytical method. I have given that slide. You can see how in Shankara's writing, especially in his commentary on the Brahma Sutra, we find the analysis of language. And I have given some examples. For example, the 6 marks, Sadlinga of the purpose very clearly shows how Shankara practiced the method of analysis. This is one example. For want of time, I am skipping. Then the method of Adhyaropa and Apavada, okay, that is also the method of analysis. This is what my teacher, Professor R.B. used to say. Adhyaropa and apavada. That is affirmation, and you would say that is subsequent negation. For example, we say in Isha Upanishad it is said that moves, that does not move. So you see how there is a affirmation and immediately there is a negation. And there is a need for us to resolve this apparent contradiction. So this is the method of analysis. So the first method of analysis which is available in Indian tradition, especially in Advaita, is that Adhilinga. And secondly, the method of Adhyaropa and Apavada. And third method is also available, that is the method of Lakshana. The method of Lakshana, you say that it is a primary and a secondary meaning. But when this method was introduced in the West, especially in Paul Ricoeur, some of those who are familiar with Paul Ricoeur, they would accept that. Because in Paul Ricoeur talks about the first order reference and the second order reference. So the first order reference is always sublated by the second order reference. And this is nothing but the distinction we have in Indian philosophical tradition, that is the method of Lakshana. So what in short we can say that the method of analysis which is practiced in the West is not alien to us. This is my standpoint. So similarly, you can look at Purva Mimamsa or Nyaya or Buddhist philosophy where you can see the method of analysis. Of course, the method of analysis is something remarkable. We admit that. It is the contribution of the West. But you look at Indian tradition and then you would understand how Indian philosophers have also practiced such a method. And Indian philosophy, we must know that there is always a renewal of Indian philosophy through Renaissance. It is not something static. The morning Professor Bhatt has very beautifully stated that. And it is not static, it is always dynamic. For example, you start from the Upanishads, then move to Bhakti movements, and then we have modern Renaissance. So every time, at every period of time, it is always the Indian philosophy has been renewed, I would say, so that we'll understand the significance of it. And another thing is, the tradition and modernity in Indian philosophy is something remarkable. Tradition is a very beautiful term. And in fact, in the West, when H.C. Gadamer came to this philosophical scene, then the word tradition has become very, very prevalent and it became very important concept. But in Indian philosophical tradition, the value, the significance of tradition is very much appreciated. But the problem is, Indian philosophers very clearly say tradition is not something static. In fact, Gadamer says tradition is that which connects the past, present with that of the future. But look at Indian philosophical tradition. It also says that tradition is something always growing. In fact, it is not something which is rigid. In fact, if it is something rigid, then it becomes orthodoxy. And very clearly, Indian philosophers have stated that the tradition and modernity is always constantly changing. In fact, my teacher used to say in Indian philosophical tradition, there are two elements. One is some water. There are two important aspects of tradition. One is the core tradition and the periphery. So what is the core? The core elements of the tradition cannot be changed. So if we change that core element, then no more it exists as a tradition. But there are certain elements, the periphery of that tradition can be changed. In fact, so it allows, which means our Indian tradition allows the modernity also. It does not reject modernity. Modernity is always included in tradition. Look at, for example, the Kyoto school. In the Kyoto school, you can see the synthesis of tradition and modernity. So Indian philosophical tradition, especially I am committed to Advaita Vedanta, so I would say it is Advaita Vedanta which talks about the synthesis of tradition and modernity. And also, it has got a relevance. Indian philosophy has got a relevance. In fact, many contemporary thinkers argue that there is no, no creativity in Indian philosophical tradition, especially in the contemporary period. In fact, there was one Swami Akheyananda Bharati, he said, he wrote an article in the year 1952, he's from States. He says that there is no creativity in Indian philosophical tradition after independence. But I would say that there is a lot of creativity in Indian philosophical tradition, but we fail to record them. Look at, for example, the contribution of J.N. Mohanty, the contribution of Professor R. Balasubramanian, the contribution of Professor S.R. Bhatt. He has produced recently a book on Indian spiritual philosophical discourse, and also he has written something on applied ethics. These are some of the important Subhijit Bhattacharya's contribution, applying the Western model expression symbolic logic to Indian philosophical tradition. These are some of the important contributions which have emerged during the contemporary period, but we fail to record that. This means that there is nothing wrong with Indian philosophical tradition, but the fault lies with the philosophers. They try to show or they try to neglect the role played by the philosophers in India. This is something which I have to record because all the time, I mean, many of the Western thinkers in India, they claim that, I mean, they're not Western thinkers, those who write on Western philosophy all the time, they think that there is no creativity. They claim that we have not contributed anything new. It is not like that. You fail to understand the philosophical discourse. And I think people like our, S.R. Bhatt can really give a direction. And we, philosophers need some direction. We are lacking this direction. So there is nothing wrong with Indian philosophical direction. Don't criticize it by saying it is old and it has nothing to do with the existing problem. Then look at the eco-philosophy. Now, in the West, the environmental issues has become very important, and we talk about eco-philosophy. Then we quote Raimondo Panikkar, for example. My friend knows. But the cosmotheantric vision of Raimondo Panikkar is very much available in Ramanuja's philosophy. So all these are very much available in Indian philosophical tradition, but we fail to note down all these aspects. This is one of my contention. And secondly, the hermeneutics. When hermeneutics emerged as a separate discipline in the West, due to thinkers like Heidegger, Gadamer, and others, this has influenced philosophers throughout the globe. Yes, and they say this is something marvelous. But you look at Indian philosophical tradition, we too have a hermeneutical tradition. Why? Because I would like to argue like that. One may say that why I am saying that everything is very much available in Indian tradition. I give proper argument, and you can have a debate with me. Now, I'll restrict myself to Gadamer. Gadamer says for hermeneutics there are three criteria. What is that? Tradition, then interpretation and understanding, and language. These are the four elements which are necessary for hermeneutics, at least in the context of Gadamer, the philosophical hermeneutics of Gadamer. But if you look at Indian philosophical tradition, especially I am restricting myself to Advaita, you see the role of language, because language is said to be the core of hermeneutics. And similarly, the concept of tradition, already I have discussed the notion of tradition, so I am not going to repeat it. But second important concept, interpretation and understanding. This is something very much remarkable in Gadamer. Because Gadamer says when you are interpreting something, you are understanding something, and when you are understanding something, you are interpreting. So both are taking place simultaneously according to Gadamer. But look at Shankara. Some of his commentaries on Brahma Sudra or Bhagavad Gita or the Upanishads very clearly show that he has got a method of hermeneutics which is very much applied. But we fail to recognize the method which Shankara has adopted in fact, I would say we are very much ancient with regard to the hermeneutical method. How did we have this three systems of Vedanta? We have got three scriptures: Bhagavad Gita, Brahma Sutra, and the Upanishads. The texts are one and the same, but we are able to give three different interpretations, and as a result of that, we are able to have three different systems. That is nothing but the hermeneutical method. So the hermeneutical method is also very much available in Indian philosophical tradition. But since many of our Western thinkers here, I mean, teachers of philosophy who work only on Western philosophy, they think that hermeneutical method, which Gadamer and others, Schleiermacher, Dilthey and others, they say is something remarkable. Of course, they are remarkable, but you can see the traces of hermeneutics in Indian philosophical tradition. That is my contention. So everything. Now, another important thing is that the way how do you look at the text? In fact, the Westerners very beautifully say that a text cannot be defined. What is a text? Anything can be a text, according to them. For example, we have a Sadhguru's photo here. That is a text. A beautiful mountain is a text. Any cinema which is very thought-provoking, like Kabali, is a text. So this means how you look at the thing. So text need not be restricted to something which is already written. So this method is something new, no doubt. In fact, in the West, we are talking about the death of the author. Once the author writes something, we say the author dies. That is Roland Barthes' theory, literature theory. Some of you might be aware of that. But this method of understanding the text from multi-dimensional way is not something new to us. So it all depends on how you see. Now Bhagavad Gita has got a different understanding. For example, many contemporary thinkers have interpreted Bhagavad Gita in a different way. Now we are talking about social justice. Now they are trying to analyze Bhagavad Gita from the social justice point of view and say that this must get a new interpretation. So it all depends on how you look at the text. Don't depend on the particular method alone. One method will be a problem. So philosophers must be ready to develop a multi-dimensional approach. I'll take just 2 minutes and then conclude. Then in another important thing is that in hermeneutics, the whole and part relation is very important. Because in order to understand the whole text, you must know the parts. In order to understand the meaning of the parts, you must know the whole. So there is an interrelation between the whole and the part, and this is known as the hermeneutic circle. But if you look at any text, like for example Shankara's interpretation of Bhagavad Gita, you can see that the whole part relation very much is operating. You just cannot take a particular passage and then you don't come to a conclusion. So unless you read the entire text, the meaning of the text is invisible. So the whole and part relation is also not something new to us. Then I come to another important movement in the West, that is the phenomenological method, my favorite method, my teacher's favorite method also. Okay. Now what is phenomenology? The phenomenological method emerged in the West as a reaction to the existing modes of philosophizing. So all the methods of philosophizing, according to the phenomenologists, are wrong. Okay. So they wanted to develop what is known as a presuppositionless understanding. Please note that. Presuppositionless understanding. But presupposition is an inevitable factor in philosophy. But these people try to develop in the West, like Husserl, Brentano, Husserl, Heidegger, and all. They try to develop this phenomenological method. But the phenomenological method, though it wanted to develop the presuppositionless philosophy, the phenomenological method itself got entangled by the presupposition. And another good example is Wittgenstein. Wittgenstein's philosophy is nothing but critical thinking. He said philosophy can make things only, it gives a clarity. But so he says, Wittgenstein said you can start philosophy anywhere and stop anywhere. But the method which he has suggested has certain limitations because he is also caught. This is like the Kantian method. Kant wanted to reject metaphysics in his own way, but he was caught. So it is not possible for us to reject any metaphysical presupposition claims which are very much available. So now the phenomenological method explains the significance of consciousness in a philosophical way, because I would say that the major contribution of phenomenologists is to show that how the intention of consciousness should be understood in relation to object. That's why they talk of a conscious of, which means object's intentionality of consciousness, or what they say, the objects must exist. Now, this is a very beautiful concept, no doubt. Husserl's contribution is something remarkable, and later, of course, Sartre and others they show the limitation of that method. But the method of understanding consciousness developed by Husserl is very much available in the Indian tradition. In fact, my teacher, Professor R.B., used to say that Advaita is what we call transcendental phenomenology. You look at the fascination of R.B. towards phenomenology as well as Advaita. He said it is a transcendental phenomenology. So, what is the philosophy behind the entire phenomenological method? They say consciousness is something unique. Consciousness is the focus of phenomenological method. Fine. But look at India. In fact, Professor R.B. in his Nice Chemistry, this edited volume of Nice Chemistry, argues that the consciousness which the Westerners talk about has its own limitation. Because he says that the consciousness of Husserl or Heidegger or Brinton or anybody for that matter talks about only objects which are connected to the world. So this means we are talking about the empirical consciousness alone. But there is also another way of understanding consciousness. Now look at the Mandukya Upanishad. The three states of experience, Jagra, Supna and Susupti, and then in all these three states of experience, there is consciousness. In the waking level, there is consciousness. In dream, there is consciousness. In deep sleep, also there is consciousness. But all this consciousness, I mean, all types of consciousness which emerges in these three contexts are, according to Arvind, fragmented consciousness. Okay. Then there is also a consciousness, a type of consciousness which Arvind is called. That is, they say, I mean, in the Turiya state, for example, the consciousness is present, but there is no objects. But normally the Westerners say, in the nature of consciousness, objects should be present. We cannot think of abstract consciousness. But the Arvind is very clearly saying the fourth stage of consciousness, or the fourth level of consciousness, let me use the word level, that is Turiya, where you don't see the object. Because in that stage you are identical with the Supreme. So the Mandukya Karika, the Mandukya Upanishad very beautifully argues that there are two types of consciousness which was not seen properly by the West. What is that? One is a foundational consciousness, and the other is a functional consciousness. The functional consciousness is something which is always related to empirical experience. But besides this empirical experience or empirical consciousness developed by this. So all these methods show that the so-called development that has taken place in the West in the 20th century, because I am not going back. You can make a comparison with Kant and Shankara. But now I am concentrating only on the 20th century philosophy. So the so-called 21st century or 20th century philosophy that developed in the West has some implication, or I would say that it has been long back anticipated by our Indians. No, it is not like that. It is something like a parallel view. In fact, a great thinker like Makila, he would say that the problems are one and the same. Professor Bhatt was also telling that. Problems are one and the same. It is not whether it is Indian philosophy or Western philosophy. In fact, there are some scholars who do not agree that distinction between Indian philosophy and Western philosophy. They say, is there something called Indian chemistry and Western chemistry? No. But we must all remember, according to Murthy, case Murthy, according to him, he says that this is nothing but the way of looking how philosophy has developed in India. So that's the reason why we say it is Indian philosophy. China, the philosophy developed by Confucius and others, Chinese philosophy. So Matilal very clearly says that we have to see how different perspective one can see for the same problem. Problems are one and the same because we say that everything, the entire Western philosophical discourse is nothing but a footnote on creation. So that's one way of understanding. So everything is very much available. So, but it all depends on how you look at the problem. So whether it is a Brahman or being, they're one and the same. Maybe from two different areas one can go into deep and then one can see some parallels. So this means whether it is consciousness or being, you see certain similarities. So the concepts are one and the same, but we try to answer these problems, questions raised by philosophers, we get a different answer. So the problems are one and the same, but the answers are different. So this method of looking at Indian philosophical tradition, I think, is a need of the hour. Most of the time, I feel that we forget to record these things. One more, I take just 1 minute and close. For example, we have postmodernity, which I am very fond of course. This has become a very important movement. Actually, we should not call it as a movement. It is an intervention. When this has emerged, it has made a tremendous impact on philosophy. Why? Because postmodernity rejects a culture, universal culture. It rejects the notion of rationality, this, that, and all. Okay. But if you look at Jaina, for example, Jaina's Anekantavada is nothing but the postmodern understanding. That's all. So why can't we appreciate that? So different methods of philosophizing which are available in the West is not new to us, my say. The only thing is, we the teachers of philosophy or the students of philosophy fail to recognize that. That is possible. So my humble request or my submission is that the need of the hour for philosophers or teachers of philosophy is that we must update our knowledge. We must update our knowledge. I give one example. Our teacher was Balasubramaniam. He attended the IPC session at Madurai. So that was the last session he attended. Till then, he was around 80 at the time. Till then, his mental balance is something remarkable. He always used to tell us, read and write. But of course, after that, he fell ill and he lost his memory. That's a very pathetic situation. But one thing which we have learned, some of us learned, is that don't keep it right. And the first thing you would ask is, what are you reading now? So this type of inspiration is very much essential. So each student or a teacher must have a very good inspiration from the teacher. That is very much essential. Because the teacher master needs something new. And he used to give a joke. He would say, if you want to become an enemy of your friend, just ask him to write one paper. From that time onward, he will not come and see you. So this means, philosophy. I feel that we learned. I speak a lot orally, and many of us here we learned a lot from him because we have to be alert that one must, as Suresh said, one should not philosophically die. Your mind must be alert. You have to read. And a teacher, there is a Chinese proverb, a beautiful Chinese proverb, which says that a good horse rider must have a good horse. Similarly, a good horse must have a good horse rider. If this does not tally, then the result would be bad. So similarly, a good teacher must have a good student, and a good student must have a good teacher. This means a teacher must ask the student to read. That is possible provided the teacher also reads. So I think this is we have something to contribute. Last week I and Murali were discussing over the phone for more than 2 hours. So Murali is also very much aware of the difficulties. What is that we are doing in the class? So in fact he is going to talk about it. So this is my humble submission. Thank you.
you, Professor. The floor is open for discussion now.
Hey, Professor, thank you so much for this challenge you have given for us. My question would be like, when you do this kind of terminology exercise, which is what you call trans-civilization or trans-culture, what you call cross-culture, how do you use a paradigm, like a concept? For example, you just before you know, in your talk you said about the postmodernity in China and Ekantala. I think there is a paradigm shift there. Because postmodernity does not believe in absolute knowledge. Jainism does. Jainism says, Syadapti, it's okay for people like you and me. Once you are capable, you get the full knowledge. Now that's the problem. I mean, you have different paradigms there. Okay. Even within that, now in the school debate. Now I'm surprised. I agree that terminology believes in that consciousness is always intentional. Thanks to Brandama, Buddha, etc. But within Advaita, if you take Ramanujacharya, you would say consciousness is always intentional. Therefore, you just bring Shankara's notion of the Guna Brahman. He says in his Agavati, that is the imagination of the Advaita, he says that. So we have this problem when you go from the peripheral to the core. So I think one should also, I think, humbly accept there are all difficulties here. For example, Professor Dale Mehta could call Heidegger a Western Rishi. Actually, my point would be this wonderful project. Yeah. But then when a person, as social philosophy does, transcultural or cross-cultural hermeneutic, when he or she encounters this problem, at the core level, I would say, you said that the tradition at the core level remains same. I have my doubts, sir, because if you look at Naga tradition, it is in Karika, the first chapter is Pratya Pariksha. From that he goes on the Vishnu Bhava Bhava. And look at Shankara, quite different. So how do you look at this, paradigm shift when you do this wonderful idea of talking across or talking to within the school and also outside the school?
Yeah, thank you. See, yeah, wonderful questions. Now the cross. I am not promoting. I am not promoting a cross-cultural understanding. That is not my intention. My basic aim or my primary aim is to show that it is necessary for us to go back to our tradition instead of praising all the time the best. Okay, now the problem is, now you made a reference to Jainism. Now, one of the paradigm shift, right? But paradigm shift takes place within that tradition, within that postmodernity itself. Because now, among the postmodernists, there is no common methodology. But in spite of that, we call them, whether it is Habermas, whether it is Derrida, Deleuze, we call them postmodernists because now it is like the analytical philosophy. No, the method of analysis is different from one another among the analytical philosophers. In spite of that, we call them analytical philosophers. So similarly, in postmodernity, though there are some variations within the category, they are known as the bigger name state. In fact, Habermas belongs to that because some people by quoting postmodern, what is that modernity, so they say that he cannot be called as. So what my contention is that the paradigm shift is within that paradigm itself. So it is not something which we can aim at. But what is important is when I am making a comparison between the postmodernity of the rejection of one culture or one way of understanding with the Jainism is that Jainism, according to me, allows different dimensions, different ways of understanding. The core, the absolute knowledge that I'm not going into that. I'm not bothered about that. I am concerned about, for example, I'm concerned about the multicultural understanding. How I could be viewed or I could be seen from your perspective. That is the reason, see, in fact, I would go further, but I don't know whether it is right to tell that, but I have to tell one minute, I have to tell here that there are alternate ways of doing philosophy. Even Indian philosophy, I would say. Okay, so but all the time we have got the Akbaric paradigm, though I am very much fascinated by that. I would say there are different ways of, for example, like subaltern historiography by Ranjit Guha. We can also develop the subaltern Indian philosophy. That the heterodox system like Jainism, they prescribe a different methodology. So why can't we apply? That's why while quoting Suresh Chandra, I said the third category of philosophers can really contact. Because you need a method. And I take the method from the West. In fact, one of the seminars, one of the participants asked me, why you take the Western method? I said, it is convenient to me. If you have some method, you adopt. And moreover, I am not, please note that I am not against Indian tradition. I am not criticizing Indian tradition. Like Jain Mohanty, who said that it is a high time for us to reject those dead things in philosophy, Indian philosophy. And Krishna very beautifully said the Indian philosophy is mummified, you have to be killed. So something which is very well available in the West, and I can't know. I never would claim everything already we have. No, that is not the thing. That is the reason why I adopt the method of Western, and then I would also say the limitation. It is not, you can't put a parallel column and say, here it is, something like that, this, that. And then finally everything is one. No, that is not my issue. Some methodology will adopt, and in order to show that how our ancient culture has got something which is very valuable, because most of the time we reject, because this my paper, my conclusion is against those who argue that there is nothing in Indian philosophy, especially in contemporary India. That is. Yeah. Please tell your name.
Ambitious scholar of Pandit.
I don't know whether.
Thank you, sir, for your presentation. It is a comprehensive manner. I have certain doubts, sir.
Yeah,
When we are talking about consciousness, the various types of consciousness we mentioned. For object existence, empirical consciousness and transcendental consciousness you mentioned. Which you more prefer? Which consciousness will be more preference for the existence of object? Either elemental consciousness or another one you mentioned empirical consciousness. Suppose one object exists. Out of the two consciousness, which consciousness do you like to prefer?
Which one I prefer? Yeah.
Both are needed, but which one is more comprehensive?
Yeah. I am concerned about something different. I am interested in social consciousness, and our friend Murali knows that. No, we are trying to develop something new, because this is, if you want to be a strict application, these are your methods. But there is also another way of understanding consciousness. Now, one thing, but with regard to the empirical consciousness, object is needed. So I would like to prefer the object, the consciousness, which is related to object only. In fact, you also made a reference to that. It is Ramanuja. In fact, in one of my articles, I argued Ramanuja's understanding of consciousness is better than Shankara for various reasons. That is thing different. But I am always, I am being a empirical entity, since I am more concerned about this world and the problems of the world. I would like to associate myself with the empirical concept. I am not concerned about transcendental, whether it exists or not. But I presented it from other standpoint. That's all.
Sir, is the discussion taking place in the context of phenomenology?
No, agree.
Phenomenological method, right?
Which method is mostly preferred? The two methods in a sense, either transcendental or
No, that's not a method. I didn't say it is a method.
Then how can you say so transcendental, sir?
No. See, I said different method. For example, analytical method, deconstructive, all these are methods. But with regard to consciousness, I said in Indian context, okay, we have this empirical and the transcendent. Okay, that is fine. And the Westerners, they do not talk about this transcendental consciousness because our way of understanding, I mean, Indian way of understanding is something different. But as a philosopher, as a person, I would say a layman who is committed to this empirical world and have a responsibility towards the society. So I would say, apart from these two, I would like to develop a social consciousness. So there now my framework of Advaita or Husserl will not support. But here I would like to tell you one thing, very interesting thing. Some of you might know. In the West, we talk about a similar in Daniel Dennett, Vijay Sardi knows. Daniel Dennett, in his well-known book Consciousness Explained, he talks about what is called heteroconsciousness, heterophenomenology. Now, in the heterophenomenology, the other is important. But normally in phenomenology, I and my feelings, my sufferings are important. Okay, but Dennett could see the problem from third person. So the third person consciousness or the other's consciousness is also important, and this way of another way of looking at it. That's why I would like to go further and say that in phenomenology, whether it is Eastern or Western, we are concerned about our own self, myself. That's all. But how about the consciousness of the other? That for that we have to go to there.
So Daniel Dennett is an analytic philosopher.
No, but he also written on phenomenology. This book you read.
See, when you're saying the other consciousness, it is not a phenomenological exercise.
No.
Phenomenological
There are
exercise.
two. Yeah, that's why. That is how we understand phenomenology. That's why I said I and my feelings, my suffering, my conscience, all that. But Dennett said there is also another way of looking at consciousness. That no, he himself says this is heterophenomenology. He is using the word heterophenomenology. Heterophenomenology is nothing but the experience of other. If I don't experience